Welcome back to the Craft Diaries Podcast. If we've not met before, hi, I'm Em, also known as Meema Makes. I'm a crochet designer and a knitter based in the UK, and this is my monthly podcast where we talk about all of the projects that I've been working on in the past month. Today's episode is mostly about the jumpers and cardigans that I'm knitting this autumn, but I am also working on 2 crochet blankets, and I will talk about them towards the end of the video. If you entered last week's giveaway to win this bundle of hand-dyed yarn straight from my stash, then do check out the community tab of this YouTube channel, as I've just announced the lucky winner, so yeah, check out that post. So the only finished project I have from the last month is the jumper that I'm wearing. I'll put up some footage on the screen now so you can see the full length of the jumper. So this pattern is the Kerr Sweater by Clow. I will link all of the patterns that I talk about in this episode down in the description. This is my favourite type of construction of a jumper. It was a top-down drop shoulder. It's knit in DK8 yarn and it's a size inclusive pattern. This was actually my first ever finished colourwork project. I've really struggled to learn colourwork, and I went into detail about my journey of learning how to knit colourwork English style without having to hold yarn in my left hand in the last podcast, so I won't go into that journey again. However, I am so proud that I have a finished colourwork jumper. I am so proud of myself for knitting this. It's been a long journey to get to the point where I can knit colourwork. I really recommend this pattern. It's quite straightforward. The only problems that I had with it is I did make a few changes. So I actually changed the colourwork chart, because in the colourwork chart in the pattern, the little squares here, some of them have a different design and I wanted them all to have the same design, so I did edit the chart there. The other change I made to the colourwork chart was underneath the arms here. You can see I've got sort of this line, I'll come a bit closer, of diamonds here. So I actually sort of made that up because in the pattern she recommends to do partial sections of the chart, and that would then create a jog in the pattern, so I chose to do this instead. I did talk about that in the last episode, so I won't go too much in detail to that. The other thing that I found when I was knitting the sleeves is they were huge. If you follow the pattern, I had to decrease quite aggressively to get a kind of normal shaped sleeve after that colourwork band, because you're not doing any decreases along this colourwork, even though I probably could have put some decreases here, but I then had to quite aggressively decrease. I can't remember exactly how I did decrease. If you are knitting this and finding that your arms are too big, I always link my Ravelry projects down below, and I keep quite detailed notes of my projects, so I have written my decreases for the sleeves here. The other change that I made is, I'll just stand up and show you. So I'm hoping you can see here, there's a line of increases here, and this is because I have a 47-inch bust and a 52 or 53-inch hips. So I've got, like, I'm kind of pear-shaped, so I needed a couple of increases. There's not a lot, I can't remember how many I did, maybe 5 increases down here just to sort of accommodate my hips. And actually I probably didn't need them, because when it blocked it really sort of grew in width, not so much in length but in width. The sleeves definitely grew in length though, because these were like barely touching my wrist and now they're here, which is fine because I like that in my jumpers. I like to be able to do this in my jumpers to keep my hands warm when it gets cold. So I think that was all of the changes that I made to the pattern. I did, if you watched last time's podcast, I did have this as a rolled over like turtleneck. But when I tried it on at the end, I found that it was actually kind of itching my neck a little bit, so I kind of halved it. So my collar is a little bit longer than the pattern because I wanted it up to my neck so I don't get cold, because I get cold so easily. I'm one of those people that just gets cold at the drop of a hat. So it's quite a tight fitting collar around my neck, so it is a little bit longer than the pattern. But what I really like about my journey of learning how to knit clothes over the past, I think it's about a year that I've been knitting jumpers and cardigans now, I really love that I can sort of customise things. Like I can put those A-line increases in to make the hips a little bit bigger, and I can make the collar a little bit longer or the arms a little bit longer if I want to. And I'm so happy that I now have these skills, so that as I'm knitting, because I seem to be knitting more and more and more garments because I'm enjoying it so much, that I'm hoping that I can improve my skills so that I can start applying those techniques when it's not just a stockinette pattern. I'm knitting a cabled cardigan at the minute, and I would like to make some changes to it, but I don't have sort of the confidence to do that with cables just yet. But I'm hoping that I will sort of build myself up as I sort of knit more and more and more complicated garments. So let's talk about the yarn that I used to knit this next. So the pattern calls for a DK weight yarn. So I chose to use Serda Howarth Tweed, which is a DK weight yarn. It's a 50% merino, 50% nylon blend. It has quite a strange texture before it was washed. I don't know if it's still got the lanolin in, maybe from the wool, but it's quite a loosely spun yarn, and I just have a feeling it's going to bobble really badly, especially like under the arms, just because of the texture of it. So the colours that I used I used Rydale Russet, which is this sort of tomatoey orangey red colour, and then I used Yorkshire Stone for the colour work. I think I ended up using either 8.5 or 9 balls of the Rydale Russet and 1.5 balls of the Yorkshire Stone. I can't remember what size I knitted. I'll put that on the screen, what size in the pattern that I knitted. So one of the good things about this yarn is it's a tweed yarn, so that means it has neps of different colours, fibres through the yarn. So I'll put in some footage now of it sort of up close knitted up. So it is this tomatoey orangey red colour, but it has flecks of like a brighter orange, a turquoise, a purple. It just has all these different coloured flecks in it, and the knitted fabric is really beautiful, and I love that it's got that sort of extra added interest as well. But yeah, I do have a fair amount left over from this because I bought a 10 pack of the contrast colour thinking I would make 2 jumpers. I did talk about maybe de-stashing that in my yarn stash video. I did a massive 2.5 hour long yarn stash video last week. I'll link it up in the top corner if you're interested. I'll also link it at the end of this podcast. And I talked about maybe getting rid of it, or maybe using it to knit a jumper, or maybe selling it. And I was going to see how this washes, and this has softened up quite a lot. It doesn't have the funny texture that the yarn has. Now it's been, I sort of gave it a hand wash and blocked it flat. It has softened up. It doesn't have that weird texture anymore, but I just know it's going to bobble, and I didn't massively enjoy knitting it because the texture of the yarn is quite uneven. So I just didn't enjoy knitting with it. So I think I am going to de-stash that yarn. I am going to potentially sell it locally or donate it, like I am doing with a lot of the yarn that I de-stashed in that yarn stash video. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with this yarn. I'll keep a small amount for mending, but apart from that, I will be moving that on to someone who will probably enjoy the yarn more than I will. So now I've got this colourwork jumper under my belt and I feel a bit more confident knitting colourwork. I've been going through all of my Ravelry favourites and like adding patterns to my queue and just having another look at all of the colourwork patterns that I've favourited over my years on Ravelry. And there's a few on there that I think I'm going to knit, but before I actually knit those, I want to make some progress on the cardigan that I've cast on actually. So I've spoken previously about how I want to knit a Christmas jumper or a cardigan. I was thinking about maybe a crocheted one last year, and I just always leave it too late. I always forget, and then I think about it in like November and it's too late then for me to knit or crochet something specifically for Christmas. But I remembered this year, so I cast it on in September, and I'm very proud of myself that I cast this jumper on. So I was searching for a Christmas colourwork jumper or a cardigan. I knew I was going to buy the yarn for it, so I wasn't going to be using any of my stash, so I was fine with what weight yarn it was. And I was just looking on Ravelry, and there aren't a huge amount of Christmas specific colourwork jumpers. And I didn't want anything too garish. I wanted something reasonably classy, but I did want colourwork, and I kind of maybe wanted like reindeer or Christmas trees, snowflakes, snowmen, something like that on it. But I didn't want all over colourwork. I wanted maybe just colourwork here or colourwork around the yoke. And then the pattern that caught my eye is actually 2 patterns by the same designer. So the designer is Skeindeer Knits. She does have a YouTube channel. I happen to have watched some of her videos in the past actually, and I recognised the name when I saw the pattern on Ravelry. So the patterns are called the Festive Yoke Jumper or the Festive Yoke Cardigan, and these patterns look really good because you can kind of customize them. She provides you, I think it's 20 different colourwork motifs that you can mix and match on the jumpers, so you can kind of customize it. So say you don't like that reindeer that she's used in her jumper, she has all the charts for all these other ones, so you could maybe replace that reindeer with a present or a snowman or a snowflake or something. So I found that really good because then I could customize the colourwork that I used for it. So I was really excited about this, and I decided to go for a cardigan because in general I tend to wear cardigans a lot more than I wear jumpers, and at Christmas the last 5 years I've worn the same lacy red jumper on Christmas Day, and I thought I would do a cardigan, sorry, not a jumper. So what I thought I would do is I would knit a red cardigan, because that seems to be what I want to wear on Christmas. So I thought that. And then when I was looking on Ravelry at sort of the yarn recommendation for this pattern, it recommends 2 strands of a lace weight yarn. And I looked at this lace weight yarn and it's quite expensive. So I was thinking maybe I could use a 4-ply or a sport weight yarn, because that's what a lot of people were using. So I saw that some people had used a yarn called Filcolana Panilla, and I have bought some to show you. So, and originally I thought I would make a jumper by the Ravelry creator that I've put up on the screen, that was a pale grey with the main motifs on the jumper were red with a dark grey of the sort of like the smaller ones between the different charts that you can choose. So I chose the colours 957, which is this really pale grey, 955, which is this sort of darker grey. This kind of reminds me of like school uniform jumpers grey. And then this dark red, which I think is called Merlot, but it's colour 804. And it's like a cherry red, but it's got a very slight purple haze to it. So I bought these 3 colours trying to sort of imitate that cardigan that I saw on Ravelry, and then I swatched it up and I didn't like it. So I did buy enough to make this. I swatched it and I just didn't like it. I didn't like the colour combination. I don't know why. I really like it in that project, but I just don't like that colour combination anymore. And I thought, do you know what? I would much prefer a red cardigan with like white motifs on it, because it's kind of more traditional Christmas colours and what you would think of with a Christmas jumper, and B, I've worn a red cardigan for Christmas Day for years, so I know that I would actually wear it. So I then had another look through Ravelry to have a look at what sort of yarns people were using for this, and a yarn that kept popping up again and again was Raumer Garn Finnel, which is an 100% Norwegian yarn, and it is 175 metres per 50 grams, so it's got the same meterage as the Filcolana Peruvian. And the colours that I went for were 428 for the main part of the cardigan, which is kind of like this cherry red. And then I'll just grab the other one. I think this colour's 70 something. I don't have the label here, so I'll pop up the colour that I'm using. So that's sort of the contrast colour. This is more of a pale grey beige. It's a little bit heathered, but I didn't really want to go for white, because I thought it would, because the red is not that vivid, I thought the white would be too much with it, so I went for sort of this beigey colour. It looks white knitted up. I'll show you it knitted up in a minute. So this is 100% Norwegian wool, and it is a rustic yarn. It's fairly loosely spun, as you can see, but it is recommended for colour work, and there are a lot of people that had used this yarn for this pattern, so I kind of knew that I'd be able to get gauge with it. It's not massively prickly. It's a little prickly, I think, on my neck, but not really anywhere else. I mean, I find the yarn that I'm knitting at the minute more prickly than this, even though this is technically rougher and this is softer. But yeah, so this is quite a rustic yarn, but I would describe it more as crunchy than like a prickly rustic yarn. It was a bit of a risk buying this, because some rustic yarns I really don't go on with, but it actually turned out really well. I actually am really enjoying knitting with this yarn. So I'll show you my swatches next. So the recommended needle size is like 4mm, I think, for the colour work, because generally with colour work you go up a needle size. So for the colour work, it was either 3.75 or 4mm needles. And my swatch, which is this one on that size needle, you can see some of those motifs there. How pretty is that? I'm actually using this tree and this reindeer. They're 2 of the ones that I've chosen for it. But how cute is that colour work? But yeah, but this gauge, when I blocked it, it turned huge. It was really, really big. So then I went down, I think this was on a 4mm needle, and then I went down to a 3.5mm needle, and it was too small. I'm using this one at the top here as well. So those are kind of the 3, I'll put them together. So those are the 3 motifs that I've chosen for mine. So I'm using that one, and that one. So that indicated to me that I needed to use a 3.75mm needle for the colour work, and probably a 3.25mm needle for the stockinette. So that's what I did for this swatch, is I've done 3.25 up here and 3.75 for the colour work bit. And I blocked it, and I don't think I quite got gauge, but it was close enough that I went ahead. I can't remember exactly. I do keep detailed notes on my Ravelry project, so I have written all of this out on the project and labelled all of the swatches. So yeah, so with this pattern you have the option of just doing colour work around the yoke, or doing all over colour work. I've chosen just to do it around the yoke, so I'm going to do sort of 3 patterns around the yoke. It's going to be that snowflake, the Christmas tree, and then the reindeer. And I'll show you where I'm up to. I had a bit of a mission trying to cast this on because I kept getting myself confused. I have crocheted a circular yoke jumper before, but I have never knitted one, and I just kept getting myself confused with the increases. But I'm there, I've done it now. I was on and off, casting this on and off over a couple of days, but I am finally there. And then once I got started on the colour work, I couldn't put it down. So I'll show you where I'm up to currently. So as you can see, it is a circular yoke. Here is my neck hole like this. And I'll show you where I'm up to with the colour work. So I've done my first so I'm doing like 3 layers in the yoke. So the first one is these snowflakes, or I think they're called poinsettias actually. Then I just started, that is the top of some Christmas trees here. Can't quite see it, but that is the top of the Christmas trees, just there, just been knitted. And you might notice that even though this is a cardigan, I'm knitting it in the round, it looks like it's going to be a jumper. That's because I'm doing my first steek. If you've not heard of what a steek is before, a steek is where you cut your knitting. So you knit your cardigan round and around and around like you would a jumper, and then you cut it. You cut your knitting up the front, and then you knit your button band onto it. You kind of fold the cut bit over, sew it down, and then do your button band. So that there is my steek, those lines there. I'm going to cut up the middle of it, which is, I'm quite nervous about it. I've never done this technique before. But I'm wanting to learn new things, and I want to improve my knitting skills overall. That's kind of the main thing I've been working on this year, is improving my sort of sweater knitting skills. So I think steeking is a part of that. This is a very rustic wool, which is perfect for colour work and perfect for steeking. I might needle felt the steek. So I haven't actually needle felted before, but basically you can felt the steek before you cut it to make it more secure. But I've been told that I don't have to do it because it's quite a rustic yarn. It should grip onto itself, so we'll see. But yeah, I'm quite enjoying this. I'm really excited to have a Christmas cardigan that I can wear every year. Yeah, I'm really excited about it. I'm really loving knitting colour work again. I've told myself I'm not allowed to cast on another colour work jumper until I've done the colour work. So I'm just doing colour work for the yoke for this cardigan, and then I'm just going to knit solid red. So once I've finished the colour work yoke section, I'm just knitting sort of round and round in stockinette. I'm then going to cast on another colour work project. I'm not quite sure yet. I really fancy the Alpine Bloom pattern. I think it's by Caitlin Hunter. I really fancy that. I have got yarn for that. I talked about it in my stash video last week. So I'm thinking I might cast that on next, but I'm not 100% sold on that. I've also got a book coming that is colour work patterns, so I might have a look in that book. So yeah, so that's the first cardigan that I've cast on. I've also cast on another cardigan. Both of them I've cast on in the last week, I think. And then I'm also planning on casting on another cardigan probably tonight. So I'm just in a cardigan mood. It's autumn, and it feels like it is like it's like jumper season. It's warm and cozy season. So all I want to do at the minute is just knit jumpers, well, specifically cardigans. I just happen to be, all of my projects that I'm planning are cardigans. So the other cardigan that I've cast on recently is the Book Club cardigan by Sari Nordlund. I'm not quite sure if that's how I say her first name, but Sari Nordlund. She has some beautiful cabled jumpers and cardigan patterns. I have actually got a few that I've bought previously that I'm planning on knitting in the future. But when I saw her knitting this on Instagram before the pattern had come out, I knew I was going to knit it because it was just beautiful. I really loved the pattern. I loved the details of the cable work. And originally I thought maybe I would knit it in sort of a similar colour yarn that she did. I think she used like a beige or a pale grey because so those lighter colours shut the cables really well. But I've wanted to knit with a dark green yarn that I've had my eye on for a while. So the yarn is a Cascade 220 yarn, which I know is a really popular yarn over in America. I think it's an American yarn. It's 100% wool worsted weight yarn. And the colour that I've just noticed I've got a bit of I don't know where this has come from, but I've just found a yarn tail attached to the front of my jumper. It's stuck to the front of my jumper. No idea where that's come from. So back to the yarn. So the colour that I've wanted to knit with for a while is called Shire. I'm a big Lord of the Rings fan, so anything tangentially related to Lord of the Rings I'm a bit of a sucker for. But I just saw this yarn, I can't remember where I first saw it. I've seen a few people use this colourway and it's just beautiful. So the yarn is Cascade 220. It is 100% Peruvian Highland wool, so it's 200 metres per 100 grams, and I've bought 8 skeins of this, so 1600 metres, because I think I'll probably lengthen the body of the cardigan just so it's a bit sort of bigger and more all-encompassing. But here is the colour. I'm hoping it comes across well because it's such a dark green that I'm hoping the details of it come out, because the lighting isn't amazing in this craft room at the minute. So this is a beautiful foresty green. It's not too light yellowy green, it's not too light bluey tealy green, it's just the perfect green. And I hope it comes across on camera, but it's got this kind of golden heather through it, which is beautiful, because a lot of the clothes and the costumes in Lord of the Rings are often a darker green with like gold embellishments. So I do think it's really well named. It's really beautiful. My partner's quite jealous of it because green is his favourite colour, and I said I'd knit him a green cabled jumper next year, and I've just cast myself on a dark green cabled cardigan. So yeah, so this yarn, I'm really happy with it. When I originally swatched this, I was really concerned that we weren't able to see the cables, but now I'm actually knitting the cardigan, I'm quite happy. It's not as obvious a colour as like you don't see because it's such a detailed stitch pattern. There's like moss stitch and seed stitch and like these cables going on, and because it's such a detailed pattern I was worried it wouldn't show on the dark yarn, but actually it's not that bad. I think it's actually okay. In a dark room you can't really see them very well, but actually if there's any sort of decent lighting you can. The colour on the screen now is actually a little bit darker than it is on real life, and I know that when I bring this close up to the camera it's going to blow it out and wash it out. You will be able to see the cables because I did sort of check this, but it's really hard to show the actual colour of this yarn now it's been knitted. So if I bring this close up, hopefully you can see my cables. Actually that's not too bad. Yeah, so the camera is now showing it lighter than it is in real life. It's a bit darker than that. So this is kind of where I'm up to with this cardigan. So in this middle section we've just got moss stitch, and then we've got these 2 charts of cables either side, and it is a top down drop shoulder construction, which is my favourite, not only to knit but also I find that it fits me really well with this is a drop shoulder like I said earlier, so with this jumper there's not too much fabric in the armpit, but I can find that with some other constructions like a circular yoke or a raglan you can sometimes have a lot of fabric in the armpit, but with drop shoulder I've noticed that you tend not to, so that's really good. So yeah, so this is kind of where you start with the drop shoulder. You knit a trapezium shape, and this actually goes, if I spin around a little bit, I hope you can see this, so that kind of goes there, so that bit at the top will go there, and then those 2 sloping sides of the, I hope you can see that, yeah you can, that's kind of the bit I'm knitting at the minute, and that's kind of the bit that you, sorry I'm crinkling a bag down here, so that's kind of where you start with a drop shoulder, and then once you've knit this trapezium you then knit flat for down the back of the armhole, and then you pick up stitches along these 2 sides to knit the 2 front panels of the cardigan, and then you join in the armpits, and that's kind of the construction that I prefer because I find it fits me so well. So this has taken me quite a few hours to get to this point. I think this pattern and this project is going to be a slow burn. I would love to get this done for Christmas because technically it is green and green is a Christmas colour, and I would love to wear this sort of around about Christmas time, but I have a strong suspicion, especially with me trying to get the Christmas cardigan done, that this is probably going to take me a long time. I doubt I'll finish this in 2024. I'm just kind of keeping it as like a complicated knitting project. I tend to like at one time have a complicated knitting project and a straightforward stockinette knitting project, and then my other ones on the go at the same time. So this is kind of my designated complicated one because of those cables. So yeah, I'll keep you updated on this cardigan in future podcast episodes, and as before, I will link the pattern down in the description. So there are 2 more sweater projects that I want to talk about. The first is a jumper I actually started in the spring that I'm thinking about frogging, that I'd like to talk about because I'd like some input from you guys as whether you think I should frog this or not. And then I also have another cardigan that I want to cast on, potentially even this evening. I'm thinking about casting this cardigan on, so I'd like to talk about that as well. So the first project to talk about is in this project bag here, and I haven't worked on this I think till April, but I did get it out, put some needles on it, back on it, and did knit about 1 inch of this jumper. And I'm just unsure about whether I should continue with it or not, and I'll talk about the reasons why. So this is the Moby Sweater by Petite knits. I've said in previous episodes I've tried 2 Petite knit patterns now, that she's such a popular designer. I think she's got like the most popular knitted patterns on Ravelry or something like that. She's a really popular designer, but I found her knitting patterns don't gel well with the way that my brain works. So this was quite difficult for me to get started, for me to do, and I wasn't that keen. I don't know why I bought this pattern in the first place, because there were other cabled cardigan patterns that I liked more. So I'm thinking about frogging this because I knit about 1 inch and I've just got no motivation to work on it. I cast this on I think in like February or March. It was around about the time we were moving, so that was about March, and it was a struggle to get going, but once I got going I was fine. I didn't mind knitting it, but I've just had no motivation to pick it up since about April, and I thought maybe it was the weather, but we're in October now, it's cooled down quite a lot, and I just have no motivation. I have no motivation to knit this at all, so I've kind of just left it. I did knit about 1 inch, got bored, and then decided I was going to order the yarn for the Hobbit. I'm calling it the Hobbit cardigan, the book club cardigan, the Hobbit cardigan. So yeah, so I don't know whether to continue this or not. What do you think? Do you think I should frog it? So it's knit with, where's the project bag gone? So it's knit with, so I'm holding double Filcolana Arvetta, which is a sock yarn in this beautiful pale pink, with holding it double with a strand of some hand dyed Suri alpaca. This is my first time using Suri alpaca. This is from Hedgerow Yarns, who is a hand dyer in the UK. So this is hand dyed Suri alpaca, and yeah, I can't remember what colour this sock yarn is. This is the colour 334. I really love pale pink, like millennial pink. I'm a millennial, so of course I do. I painted my office pink. So, I mean my craft room. I keep calling my craft room office in the videos, but yeah, I did paint it pink, so I love pale pink. I love the yarn combination, I love the feel of it, I love the knitted fabric. It's just the pattern. I don't feel like the pattern goes with the yarn. I feel like the pattern is quite a masculine, like fisherman's jumper pattern, and I'm using such a pale pink, soft, feminine yarn. I just don't think it goes very well, and I don't know how much wear I'll get out of it because I'm not hugely keen on the pattern. Actually, I don't mind that. See, now I really didn't like this when I got this out a few weeks ago, and I've got it out again, and I'm like, do I continue with it? Do I leave it and make the decision later? That's currently where my mind is at, is I leave it and make the decision later if I want to continue with it. I do definitely want to knit a jumper out of this yarn combination though, because it's so beautiful. It's so soft. Hopefully you can see the halo that Suri alpaca gives. It's so soft and fluffy, and it's gonna be so warm and snuggly in the winter, and it's just it's literally my perfect pink, that pale pink. It's just perfect. I think my problem is I love the yarn and I love the colour so much, and I just really don't like the pattern. And I think that's what's sort of biased me against it. But now I've got this out, I actually don't think the pattern's that bad. I don't know. Can we have a vote in the comments as if you think I should frog this or finish this? Give me a frog emoji if you think I should frog it. Because like, I don't know. I don't know if I want to finish this. So I've kind of just put it away and try not to think about it. And I'm just going to focus on the other 2 cardigans that I really want to knit. I'm kind of going, after my yarn stash last week, I was thinking about this, and I only want to use yarns and patterns and make things that I absolutely love, rather than just picking any old pattern and using yarn from my stash just because I've had it for 5 years and I want to use it up. if I have yarn that I don't like, that I've had for 5 years, I want to give it to someone who will love it more than me and not force myself to use it and force myself to do a project that I won't enjoy. So maybe I should frog this. I don't know. I'm going to wait until I make an actual final decision. But yeah, please let me know in the comments what you think I should do. I don't know. And I don't know what pattern I would knit it up in anyway. I don't even know if I'd do cables. I kind of just want a plain stockinette jumper in this yarn combination. Maybe I should do that. Maybe I should frog it and just knit just a normal stockinette jumper in this. Actually, I like the idea of that. I don't know. I'll leave it. And make a decision another time. Future M can make that decision. So the final cardigan that I want to cast on was actually, it was making last week's yarn stash video, that really long 2.5 hour long video where I went through every ball of yarn in my stash and I showed all of my hand dyed yarn like up close to the camera. And I think doing that made me realise how much yarn I'd actually bought for the Aimee Cardigan by Locatelli. It's a beautiful cardigan that uses 5 100-gram skeins of, I think they're called hanks actually. Someone told me in the comments that they're actually called hanks. When they're wound up like this, they're called hanks. So 5 hanks, 100-gram hanks of sock yarn to make this sort of colour block cardigan. And I've thought about knitting this pattern for like more than a year at this point. And I just want to get on and knit it. And I need, at the minute, I need just a plain stockinette project. I have got a pair of socks, but I've not really worked on them and I have no motivation to work on them right now. So I'm thinking about casting on so I've got a plain stockinette project on the go for like in front of the TV when I really want to be watching the telly, because I don't know about anybody else, but when I'm knitting or crocheting something complicated, I have to look at what I'm doing and I just glance up at the screen and kind of listen to what's going on the telly. But sometimes I'm watching something that I really love. We're currently watching through the extended versions of Lord of the Rings. We've got the last film left to go. So when I'm watching something that I'm really interested in or I really love, I like to have a plain stockinette project because I can knit without looking if it's just sort of like plain rows. So I can literally just knit and keep watching the telly. So I need a project like that at the minute, and I think the Aimee Cardigan could be a good one. It'll also help me use 5 hanks of my, it was about 100 hand-dyed hanks of yarn that I have. So it helped me use up some of that stash as well. And I had, over sort of the space of a year, kept buying odd skeins of yarn thinking that would look nice in that cardigan, that would look nice in that cardigan. Now I've got way too many, so I need to use some. So I went back through my stash that because we organised my stash behind me together in that video. You can see all of my lovely organised yarn. So I went through this and I pulled out 5 skeins, well, more than 5, but I thought I would use. I pulled out some more, I played around with some combinations, and I'm currently stuck between 2 combinations that are basically the same colours yarns. So I'll put them both up on the screen. So one of them has got all tonals. One of them I've swapped out 3 of the tonals for, one's a speckled yarn and 2 of them are more of a variegated yarn. I'm a bit stuck between them. They're basically the same colours, but that's kind of what I'm thinking at the minute. I'm leaning towards the more variegated ones on this side. I'm leaning towards this combination more. I think it'd be a bit more interesting to knit, and I'd like to see how this yarn knits up, and it's using one of my favourite ones. This, I cannot stop thinking about this yarn since I showed it in that yarn stash. It's Devil's Bayou, which is one of the 2022 Yarn Advent colours from the Fibre Fox. And it's just this dark blue and green variegated yarn, but it's quite a subtle variegation. I think it's not going to be too mad. I cannot stop thinking about this yarn and what I want to use it for. So I'm thinking about using it in the Aimee Cardigan. It's up head to head with Alison Hightower from the Lonely Knitter, which is a similar colour. It's based, but it's one colour, it's not variegated. So I'm kind of, and then the other 2 that are kind of head to head are Red Squirrel from Ducky Darlings and Book of Shadows from Fibre Fox. So this one's a bit darker and it's more variegated between like brown and a browny red, and this is more of like an orangey copper. So these are kind of head to head whether I go variegated or tonal for it. I'm leaning towards the variegated because I think it'd be more interesting. So I'm potentially going to cast that on. I've done my swatch. I've got gauge, I think. I need to actually double check that because I don't think I actually recorded that when I double checked my gauge. So I may cast that on today or not, but I feel a little bit silly having 1, 2. I've already got, if I include the Moby Sweater, I've got 3 sweater projects on the go, and I try to only have one. I just can't help myself. It's autumn and I want to be cosy and I want to be knitting jumpers and cardigans because they're cosy and it's the season for it and it's knitting season. I'm just going to cast it on, I think. I might cast it on tonight. I might wind the yarn straight after I finish filming this video and then cast it on. So anyway, that's kind of the end of this sweater knitting section. I have got a whole list of patterns that I want to cast on, but I'm not, apart from the Aimee cardigan, I'm not going to cast anything else on until I have finished one of those 3 cardigans, the Aimee, the Festive Yoke or the book club. One of those needs to finish before I cast on another cardigan or a sweater. So let's talk about those crochet blankets next. So the first one I'll talk about is my second version of the Yorkshire blanket, and the second one I've actually started a new crocheted blanket a few days ago. I have just started all of the new things in the last week, but I don't think I regret any of them. I don't regret starting any of them, especially not this blanket. I'm quite enjoying it actually. Anyways, we'll talk about the Yorkshire blanket first. So if you're new to the channel, I'm currently running a crochet along for a Yorkshire blanket. So that is a blanket that's made of 12 different granny square designs inspired by Yorkshire, that I'm doing in collaboration with Yorkshire Yarn Fest, which is in like a month's time. There are still tickets for the craft night I'm hosting at Yorkshire Yarn Fest if you're going. I'll link Yorkshire Yarn Fest down below, but yeah, I'm hosting a craft night at one of them for an hour or so. I'll get up and I'll talk about some of my designs, the inspiration behind the blanket. I'll answer some crochet questions and we'll just sit and crochet together. So there are tickets still available for that at Yorkshire Yarn Fest. But anyway, back to the Yorkshire blanket. So I made a blanket in sock weight yarn for the sort of the sample for the pattern, and then since I did that I wanted to make a heavier weight blanket in a different yarn. The yarn that I chose to do for my second version is Stylecraft Naturals Bamboo and Cotton. It's labelled as a DK weight yarn, but it works up more like a sport weight yarn. It's 60% bamboo and 40% cotton. I'll pop up the colours that I'm using on the screen. They're kind of a bit more pastel-y than I usually go for. I tend to like usually more autumnal colours, but this is a little bit more pastel-y, but I still really love the colours of these squares. So as an update, I'll show you. I'll just get my basket of squares from behind me. So I have finished all of my squares, so all 36 squares. So I'm using 12 different colours, and because there are 12 square designs, I've sort of done 3 squares of each of the 12 designs all in the same colour. And I have them, I'm going to drop this basket, let me pop that down. So I have them in a stack here. So they have all been blocked apart from 5. I've got 5 currently blocking in the bathroom. I didn't really have space for them in here. I've got quite a small craft room and I've got sort of projects and yarn everywhere at the minute, so I didn't really have anywhere to block them in here. So they're currently blocking in the bath. Yeah, I know. So they're currently blocking in the bathroom. And these have all finished blocking. You can see by these lovely sharp right angle corners that they've all finished blocking. So yeah, so I've got 5 that I'm waiting for and then I can join them. I kind of left all my blocking to the end for all of my squares. I'm not going to go through each of these squares individually because I'm planning on actually making a reel for Instagram of showing all of them individually. So, and I have shown them on previous podcasts, and I'll also link up here now the main video about the crochet along, how the pattern works, the inspiration behind the pattern that shows each of the squares individually. But I won't bore you because I have been through these squares several times on this channel. But yeah, so here are 31 of them and I've got 5 left blocking. I wish I hadn't left all my blocking to the end because I would be joining them by now, but I've spent the last 2 weeks blocking my squares because I've only got so many pins and so many blocking boards, and I've got 36 squares and I can only block 1 square per blocking board. So it's taken me quite a long time to get through blocking all of these squares. Quite heavy actually. I'm going to put these down. So yeah, so I haven't started joining them yet. I am trying to join in the crochet along week by week because I've never joined in one of my own crochet alongs before, because I've always finished the blanket in advance of the crochet along so that I can like show pictures of the finished blanket. Yeah, so I've been trying to keep up with it, but I'm supposed to be joining 6 squares this week. So each week for the next 4 weeks, we're joining 6 squares out of 24 squares. I'm making a bigger blanket out of 36, so I think I need to join like 8 a week, I think. Right? So I need to join 9 a week, and I'm going to have to play catch up because I only started blocking those last 5 squares this morning, so that's going to take a couple of days to dry. So yeah, I'm going to be behind, but I hope I finish it on time with everybody else. So yeah, I need to start joining them. So I'm going to be joining them using the colour 7128, which is Ecru. It's just like an off-white creamy colour. It's not too much of a yellow cream. I don't really like yellowy cream. So yeah, so that's the Stylecraft Naturals bamboo yarn that I'm going to be joining with. I'm looking forward to joining them actually. I find that when you're making a blanket that's not sort of in rows or a big granny square, when you're making a blanket out of like hexagons or squares or some sort of motif, the joining it all together at the end is the best part, because it's like the vision in my head has come to like fruition. It's like the reality of it. I can see what was in my head, and I'm really, really excited for that. Yes, but because I haven't been able to crochet in the past 2 weeks because I'm trying to focus on getting this blanket done, when I was going through my stash last week, I went through a box of yarn which I've had in my stash for a long time. It's mostly a yarn called Debbie Bliss Baby Cashmerino. I've had it in my stash like 12 years, I think. It's some of the oldest yarn in my stash. So I came across this box. Well, I knew it was there, I didn't just come across it. But I actually sorted out this box and I frogged all of the half-made projects. So I've got just this box of yarn. And it is bright primary colours, and that's not generally colours that I use. Or colours that I have in my house, or colours that I wear. I find that those bright colours tend to wash me out because I'm so fair. So I was thinking about what I was going to do with this yarn, and in the yarn stash video I said I was going to make a stash busting massive scarf out of it. But when I actually looked at this yarn and I thought about it, so I had way more yarn than I needed for a scarf, so I was going to have a lot left over. Then I thought, I wonder if I've got a blankets quantity. And I weighed some of it and I was like, I think I do. I think I've got a blankets quantity, but not a large blanket, like a larger baby's blanket or like a throw size blanket. So I started crocheting it, and I tried a few different patterns out, and I ended up kind of making up my own ripple pattern, because a lot of people that do ripple blankets use Attic 24's ripple tutorial for it. And I don't mind that. I have crocheted that pattern before, but because you do 2 sets of increases and 2 sets of decreases, sometimes I accidentally skip them. So I kind of adjusted that pattern to only have 1 set of increase and 1 set of decrease. I am going to do a tutorial for that ripple pattern, the ripple blanket I'm making, but I'm going to kind of crochet a bit more of it first so I can show you. So yeah, I'm making a ripple blanket that's going to be a rainbow, and it's kind of like a blended rainbow. Let me find it because I'm sure I brought it upstairs. So yeah, I found it. So I laid out all of the yarn in one long line in like in a rainbow colours. I also added a couple of balls from, if you watch that yarn stash video, I've got a shelf up here that's full of merino DK yarn, and I had quite a few like bright, almost like baby colours. So I bought those downstairs as well, and I worked out an order, and I've got various quantities of these colours. Like some of these colours I've got a small scrap of, some of these colours I've got like 3 or 4 balls of. So I couldn't necessarily do a rainbow ripple where I've got the same number of rows per colour. So I kind of had to make the randomness of how much colour I've got work. So what I've done is, I'll show you. This is kind of where I'm up to. So what I've done is, as you can see, I had less of this kind of lilac-y yarn than this magenta colour here. So this magenta's got bigger rows, but I don't think you can really, like, it doesn't look that odd, really. So yeah, so basically what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to split each colour into 3 sections to try and blend the colours together, so that the fact that I've got more of some colours than others isn't that obvious. I haven't actually measured this. It's not a huge blanket, like that big, so it's not huge, but it's also not like a baby blanket size. Like this would be like a toddler blanket size maybe, but it'd probably be a lap blanket size, I think. The problem I have with ripple blankets is I've tried to crochet so many ripple blankets over the years, and 2 things either happen with them. The first thing is I get really bored about halfway through and I end up frogging it. And because I tend to prefer like granny square or modular sort of design blankets where you've got lots of little bits rather than one massive blanket, because it gets to a certain point where I don't want it on my lap and I don't want to work on it because it's so huge. Or my tension changes as I'm crocheting it. So I've actually got a ripple blanket I got about 2/3 of the way through, and then I noticed that The first third was fine, the edges were straight, and then it started doing that, and I hadn't actually added in extra stitches, it was just that my gauge was looser. So that got abandoned as well. So I'm hoping I actually finish this. I'm hoping, because it's smaller than any other ripple I've ever tried to do, that I will, and the fact that it's stash busting. I think I might save this. I was saying this to my partner that we wouldn't have this in the house necessarily because it's such bright colours. But it's a really lovely yarn. Like, Debbie Bliss Baby Cashmerino is not the cheapest yarn. It's got cashmere in it. It's lovely and soft. It's specifically for babies. So maybe I save this for my first niece or nephew that I get. No one is pregnant or anything like that, but maybe I just save it. Maybe I put it in a sealed bag and store it when it's finished. And then I get it out and sew a little label on with their name, maybe. If I ever have nieces or nephews, I might not. I've got 4 siblings, so I would have thought I would at some point have nieces or nephews, maybe. I don't know, but could be a friend. Whoever has a baby that I'm close to in their life can have this lovely bright rainbow baby blanket. So yeah, that's what I've been working on. I'm using a 3.75mm hook. It's a sport or like a light DK weight yarn. I'd say it's somewhere between sport and light DK, but I think it leans more on the DK side. It's quite, some sport yarns can be quite thin and almost like a heavy fingering weight yarn, but this is much more of a light DK weight yarn. But because I'm a loose crocheter, I'm doing a 3.75mm hook instead of a 4mm hook. But I am going to do a little tutorial for this ripple stitch. Yeah, that's all I have to say about that really. Like I said, I'm going to be doing rainbow colours. So this is, I bought up, because this is all downstairs at the minute because I've been crocheting it in front of the telly. So that's kind of like the current colour projection. We started off with the purple and we've gone up through some pinks, and then we're about to hit reds, and then we'll go to coral and then oranges. So yeah, I've literally got it all laid out all the way through to blue, so I can just sort of, if the blanket gets too long, I can stop early if I want to. But I started with the purple because I don't really have any purpley blues. So I can make a gradient through all the other colours, but I couldn't really make a gradient between purple and blue, so that's kind of why I randomly decided to start purple and then go up through to red, rather than do the traditional rainbow that starts at red and goes down to purple. But yeah, I'm hoping that it turns out, and I hope I have enough yarn. I think I should do. It's not going to be the biggest blanket in the world, but yeah, I'm really enjoying it. So that's all of the projects I've worked on in the past month. Thank you so much for joining me for this video, and if you're looking for something to watch next, I've popped a couple of videos up on the screen. One of them will be my epic 2.5 hour long yarn stash tour. I'll see you next time.